Good morning. This is Natasha, founder of On Purpose Projects, bringing you another tip about how to create a high performance business website. Today, I want to talk about tips for hiring a web designer. In my career running an agency for 7 years, I've definitely hired and fired a lot of different web designers and can tell you some advice that I've learned about how to make sure you hire the right person who's going to cause the least amount of headache. So let's get into it. The first thing you need to know is a graphic designer is different than a web designer. A lot of times online, I see people like, I need a graphic designer to design me a website. And it might just be me being kind of nitpicky and it might just be semantics, but a graphic designer is not generally qualified to do a website. On my team, I have two graphic designers and they're fantastic. Logos, images, infographics, print pieces, reports, ebooks, brilliant, right? But then, yeah, they can design, they can make something look pretty, but that does not mean they are qualified to design a website. So the first thing that you need to know when you're hiring a designer is making sure they're an actual web designer. So let me tell you a little bit about what a web designer needs to know. A web designer is your macro person. They're the ones who usually will contract in a graphic designer to do the logo, do the images, maybe create some custom icons, maybe some infographics, maybe some reports, some downloads, some header graphics, things like that. But the web designer is the person who looks at the whole picture, the whole page. They have to visualize, how is it going to work on desktop? How is it going to work on mobile? How is it going to load? I have to design it in a way where it's going to be fast. It's going to look good, like I said, on mobile in a responsive sort of structure. They have to think through the UX of how are people going to use this website? Like, is this okay? It's not just looking pretty. It's like, how is it going to work? Is it going to make sense? Is this layout intuitive? Is it logical? And so there's so much thinking that needs to go into effective web design. It's very left brain, very technical, but also very creative. So not a lot of people have that skill set. And I know for sure because I've hired both. And a web designer has to know what a developer needs from the design. So this is one thing that I see a lot is that we'll sometimes pick up a design that we didn't design, but they want a dev team. So we'll build it. But the designer, you can see that they don't know how the development process works, and they'll design things that can't really be created based on the client's budget. So the design's something fancy and way beyond what the client, is looking for from a budget standpoint. But they just design what they think looks cool, but they don't think through that someone has to build it or whether or not it can even be done. Because sometimes we have clients who are saying they want to use a template, a specific template, and then the designer will come in and they'll introduce elements and create stuff and create functionality, but that template without a lot of custom code can't do that. So a designer needs to know how to connect with a developer while he or she is designing to confirm, can this design be built? Can this be done? Because it's great to sell a design, but if the client then takes it to developer and developer's like, sorry, your template, your theme doesn't do that without 10 extra hours of custom coding, or, no, that can't be structured to look like that, again, without a lot of custom code, then it just creates frustration for the client because the client doesn't know, like you as a client don't know what's hard and what's easy from a technical standpoint, right? You're just looking at it, yeah, that's a beautiful design. But then the developer looks at it and they're like, okay, they had an estimate of 20 hours for development. Now with all these design specifications, you're looking at 40 hours for development. So that can create a huge gap in expectations. So when you're working with a designer, make sure, well, I like in my team, for example, we have kind of at least one of everything under one roof. The designer works for the developer works for the QA, and we all have created a process. They all know the process. They all know what each other needs from the other person. So this doesn't happen that often, but make sure that your designer, if possible, before it, comes to you for approval, they've run it through whoever's going to be building your website to confirm that this design is going to fall in line with the parameters of the developer. So I hope that makes sense. Let me say it one more time. So making sure, okay, your designer is going to do a mock-up. They're going to design something. But before you sign off on this design, if possible, get that mock-up over to the developer who's going to be building this website to make sure that this design is going to be buildable without tons of custom work into the theme you're using, or if you're making changes to your existing website, make sure that it's buildable without a lot of custom code requirement. So that's really important. So making sure they know how to, they understand what a developer needs from them. And then again, making sure that they are a web designer and making sure that they have that UX experience, right? Like I was saying, where it's not just about looking pretty. Web design is functional art. Someone has to use this. It's not like a picture on the wall that's going to look pretty. Someone has to use this and interact with it across multiple devices. That's a lot of responsibility to think about. So making sure that person's trained in designing something that's going to make sense, not just have the good UI of looking good, but have a great UX of being a great user experience as well. So that being said, those are some tips that I've learned from hiring lots of designers. So if you have any questions, put it in a comment below. But yeah, let me know, what's your best tip for hiring a web designer? I'll talk to you soon.